So the next section for TA Southbounders is the town of Levin to the town of Waikanae. Part of my pronunciation on that. It is 51.1 miles. So we did not stay in this town, but I had to split this section into two. I wanted to go all the way to Wellington, but there's so much information in this section that I had to end up splitting it into two. So I'll talk about that more as we get closer to the end of this video. But when you leave the town of Levin, you get back to that junction a few scenes ago to start the official trail. There is a trail angel in Levin called Donna. You can reach out to her to get rides back from Levin. So when you begin your hike, you'll have a few miles of grassland, as you saw, farm track, until you get hit this. And this is the first initial track into the Tararuas proper, pardon my pronunciation. And this track is filled with a lot of micro ups and downs. That is going to be the flavor for pretty much this entire video. Those micro ups and downs are extremely large, and I kept this piece of film very slow motion and very long because I wanted to show you the landslide that you do have to route through. It's not too bad. You can see that the tracks cut into there, but landslides are very frequent in New Zealand, and I don't want to worry you with the frequency, but they do change the routes of the track, I believe, a lot. So that year, you can walk right through it. So we had to route around another landslide. To Magpie's right, there's that big chunk of ground missing. So you had to go steeply up and then steeply back down. Don't know what they're going to do in the season of 2023-24. That trail might be built better at that point. But for the year that we did it, 2022-2023, we had to go there. When you hit this bridge, it kind of signifies the end of your quote-unquote river track. That was a lot of those micro ups and downs, and you junction off to go up towards Richard's Knob, and it's a very long ascent. It is graded. It's not too bad. Every so often you have these kind of micro, just extreme elevation gains like that, but overall it is graded pretty well, and you can kind of hold a climbing pace somewhere in that 1.5 mile window, 2 miles sometimes. There is a couple mud pockets that will get you muddy, but you're not in the Tararua's mud proper yet. That will be your future here shortly. So, as you saw at this video, we were only doing 9 miles this day, and I want to explain that a little bit. So the reason we did 9 miles is because with this track, you never really can know your pace. You can do anywhere from 1 mile, 1.5 miles, sometimes even 0.5 mile per hour, because it is just so overgrown in portions, so muddy. You have to really watch your footfalls. So when we got to the hut this night, we got there around 4 p.m. and we really had to make a judgment call because the next hut was 5 miles away, and being a quick average, we were like, okay, it'll take us 5 hours and we would be hiking into night. And as you see with this track here, you do not want to be doing this at nighttime. You're a braver soul than I am if you do decide to do this at night. So we had to make a judgment call, and we ended up staying at this first hut. So I wanted to explain that a little bit before I started showing you all of this. You junction off at, you get to the top of Richard's Knob, and when you get to the top of Richard's Knob, that's really when you start hitting the Tararua's mud proper. It's really when you start experiencing what the track quality is going to be like for the next day, next 2 days, next 3 days, depending on your pace. And it really starts showing you kind of the jaggedness of this mountain range. Every scene that I've shot with those overviews, you can see how jagged those mountains are. And these are the pockets of mud I'm talking about. Honestly, this type of stuff is easier to move on than a lot of the other portions of the track in the Tararuas, because you can actually see where you're putting your feet. When you can't see where you're putting your feet, that's really when that pace gets cut pretty drastically. So these are the steep ups and downs, as I'm showing. Magpie was taking a quick break. So you get to the top after a very steep climb to here, and from here to the hut, it's mostly kind of small roller coastery miles. It's not any longer ascents. You're not doing like 1,000 foot, 2,000 foot, 3,000 foot climb anymore. You're mostly just doing these small pockets of ascents and descents. And it's a little muddy. These are the tussocks that really overhang on the trail. And this is the hut. Again, as I said, we got there at like 4. I'm not saying anything important. I just needed more time to explain the Tararuas proper. So we got there at 4 and really made a judgment call to stay. It is a bigger hut. Can fit around 20 people. As you see, big kitchen area, and the bunks are off to the right here. I didn't film inside the bunks because there were people already staying there, but large bunk area that you can stay at. With these huts too, there's not a whole lot of camping, so you're gonna have to make room in the huts for other folks to come by and share that space. So as soon as you leave this hut the following day, you instantly are hit with mud. And if you think it's going to end, you need to check yourself. As you see here, we only did 13 miles this day, and it's not because we stopped early. Those 13 miles took us 13 hours, averaging 1 mile per hour. So when you start with a long ascent, and this ascent is really a mixture of tussocks, mud, deep pockets. Every so often you'll go steeply down, steeply up. I feel like I'm repeating myself on that fact, but it can't be stressed enough that those micro ups and downs are really, really slow. So you can see a sign here to Draco Hut. It said 4 hours, and we were about 4 miles away from it. So it shows you that those signs in the Tararuas are really pretty much accurate, even if you're going at a really fast pace. Somebody could jog it quicker, but if you're just hiking it, your pace will fluctuate around that 1 mile per hour mark. So here's the deep mud pockets that I have talked about, and I really want this scene right here to show you how thick those tussocks are. It's hard to capture it when you're going through, but it's about chest high, as you can see on Magpie, and that's not the big part. You push through the brush. It's when you can't see where your feet are that you kind of either have to hope you're stepping in a correct place, or you just got to put faith into your step and expect to slide a little bit. So this is the false summit of the first climb. I almost said summit, but this is the... No, I apologize. This is the summit of the first climb. Got to check myself. I'm sorry. But this is the summit of the first climb, and as you can see, there's a signboard up here. It lets you know that you have accomplished your first obstacle of the day. And once you finish that first long ascent, on the way to Draco Hut, I would say these are some of the hardest miles of the Tararua. And I would say that just because of the jaggedness of this range. Again, you're not doing ascents that are 1,000 feet, 2,000 feet, 3,000 feet like you did the day prior and this morning, but you're doing this, as you can see, that ridge line, just steep, sharp ups and downs, and it's just non-stop. And these ones will really make you go slow. I don't think we went above 0.8 miles per hour. We averaged it out later in the day, but this portion really cut into our pace, so we were not going fast at all. And as you can see, you're on this ridge line, very beautiful up there. Would not want to do this in bad weather. I talked about that in the previous video, but I can't imagine doing this in bad weather. You would just have to be going at a snail's pace. Honestly, you would probably go just to the next hut, and that would take you all day. So these are the steep ups and downs I'm talking about. The Tararua range is very special because it can have weather moving at any time. So just always be aware of that and act accordingly. So you do these things that you go up to the tops of these I use alpine, but the tops of these mountains where you can see, not necessarily alpine, but then you drop into these thick pocketed forests, and that's kind of the overarching flavor of the Tararuas as well. Here's Draco Hut, and it is a 2-person hut. There is like maybe 1 or 2 places you can camp outside, but I wouldn't rely on it. I want to point out too, the water sources in this mountain ranges is all at the huts. There are no natural sources until you drop down the backside and officially start your entire descent to the YTYY hut. So that was a deep mud pocket. I love this scene here with the forest. I wish I could have captured that green a little bit better. And here's the just slow going up and down those routes over and over again. Really take your time. Most people will probably split this section into 4 days, 5 days. We kind of had a goal, so we pushed through it pretty quick. And here's the steep ups and downs. I feel like a parrot when I say that, but it's hard to kind of voice the steepness of it or show the steepness of it or capture it. It's hard to express how slow this stuff is. You can kind of know with the time splits, but it is very slow. So once you pass Draco, you have a few of these miles for a while until you start your ascent to Nichols Hut and ultimately Mount Crawford. Nichols Hut is the next major hut along the TA's route, and Nichols Hut, it can fit anywhere from 10 to 16, I think. Don't quote me on that. Please Google that if you're planning on staying at Nichols. Nichols Hut does not have that much water, apparently. We saw a lot of comments that said overall it usually kind of fluctuates with the water. So either carry it from Draco Hut or even carry it from the morning hut that you stayed at, the Te Matoa, hut. So this is Nichols Hut. Beautiful location overlooking a valley. A lot of people will shoot for there. If you decide to go past, you're ultimately going on the rest of your ascent up to Mount Crawford, which is this peak right there. And honestly, this climb was the easiest portion of the day for us. It was a long ascent again, so ultimately you do start that long ascent when you'd been doing a lot of roller coaster miles earlier in the day. But it is easy because you can actually move forward. You can actually put a foot down and instantly walk into the next footstep instead of sinking down into mud and having to watch where you put your footsteps. So this is the top. I tried to do a full 360 of it, so it might be slow motion. There's no signpost. There's just kind of a little stick in the ground that announces that you reached the summit, but this view will also announce that you're at the summit. So when you get to the top, you start this kind of ridgeline walk down for the next mile or two. Kind of fluctuates with ups and downs. Here's those micro ups and downs again. I feel like a parrot, but you drop steeply into that valley over Magpie Shoulder and then instantly gain that elevation back through this rock kind of wall formation. I wanted to point this out. This lake is the only natural water source I saw the entirety of the Tararuas along the TA route. It is about a mile or two past Mount Crawford for southbounders, so if you are in emergency need before you get to the next hut, there is that lake. I don't know how consistent that is. Could have been because of rainfall, but I did want to point that out there. So don't 100% rely on it, but there might be something you can top off. Magpie stubbed her toe. It's going to happen along this route. And once you start your descent off of that mountaintop, it is steeply down to the hut of YTYY. You're going to have to take a break, as you saw a few scenes ago, just to rest those knees. You're losing thousands of feet of elevation gain in, I think it's about 2 miles. It's a really aggressive down, so really rest those knees or do what you need to do. It is going to be a full day if you do this type of hike, the 13 miles. It will take you a long time, so this is more of the descent. I tried to kind of put it into format to show you how steep these sections are. Once you hit this bridge, it announces the end of your descent, and this bridge will lead you over to the other side of the river, which here is the hut of YTYY. I didn't film inside because there were a lot of hikers and I wanted to be polite since we got there late. So if you do stay here, there will be room in the bunks. If not, you can pitch outside. There are tent areas outside here. So the next day also, you think you've broken through the quote-unquote hardest part of the Tararuas, and you have in a way, but this day is also filled with some mystery miles. So when you leave the hut, you start a kind of roller coastery miles type section along this riverbed, up down, up down, up down. There are more natural water sources this day, so you don't have to be as conservative with water as you are up on the ridge lines of the Tararuas. Also, the year of 2022-23, there was an alternate they put into effect, and there was no sign junction. It was just a orange marker, but if you just keep following the orange markers, you'll go on the correct route. And it's a alternate because of another landslide. And we're on the alternate right here already, you can see. And this alternate is very slow going. They say it's about 4 miles, and that 4 miles took us about 3.5 hours. But we honestly felt we were going at least more than a mile per hour, so there may be a few mystery miles in there. Again, expect it to take longer than you usually expect miles in general to take if you hike in Canada or the US or anywhere else that is not New Zealand. Looney Tunes living in there. So this is the end of the alternate, and it puts you back onto this kind of tram track. I say tram, it's I think an old rail bed, and you follow this and you think you're free. You think you've broken those slow mystery miles, but I wouldn't count your ducks yet. Count your chickens before they hatch. So you are on that for a little bit, and then it takes you into flag and tape territory. So there's flag and tape around this landslide, and this is a really big one. So what they do is they put you all the way to the top of where that landslide begins, and then they expect you to sharply descend down the other side. The flag and tape also kind of disappears. You can kind of find use tracks through there. Honestly, we don't know if we went down the right track. We don't know if we went down an animal path, another smaller landslide, but you kind of just have to go and find the track on the other side. The flag and tape just completely disappeared on us. So we got to the other side here, and this is when you can kind of start averaging out your pace. You can start kind of expecting to go 2.5 miles, 3 miles per hour in certain sections. So when you hit this bridge, there is a hut right before it that some hikers stay at. I don't remember the name of it, so please Google that. You hit this bridge and it'll bring you over to a large, expansive campsite or area you can camp. And After this camping area, you hit another 2-track for about 2 miles to connect you into the next portion of trail. There are more camping areas along here, so if your miles link up, you can Google that. So this is the next piece of track. You have the Puketa track, part of my pronunciation. It is a long ascent again, but this ascent, it starts with very steep elevation for the first mile or so, and once you get to this sign, it kind of grades out a little bit. It gets more, you can see Magpie catching her breath, it kind of gets less aggressive of elevation gain, and you can hold a pace. And also the track quality itself is more hiking paceable, and it's nothing compared to what you went through the morning and the day prior. So as you get closer to the top, you kind of just continue following those orange markers that represent the TA, and once you get to the top, you will have service, and I think that might be your first service in a few days. Again, I'm not positive. I know portions of the Tararuas did have service, but you kind of had to pick your moments. So on the descent, again, it is a very straightforward descent. It is nothing like what you went through in the Tararuas, pardon my pronunciation, and you can hold a pace on it anywhere from 2.5 to 3 miles per hour, again, depending on your pace. And you just drop a few thousand feet to go back down the side of this mountain. Really beautiful forest you pass through. You get to see some awesome foliage. And when you get to here, it kind of signifies the start of your quote-unquote 2-track. This 2-track is still steep, very sharp descents in here, and it's very loose gravel, so hopefully you still have some traction on your shoes after the Tararos. As you can see, you've got to pick your way down very slowly. So once you get down that last little steep bit, it does level out at this little creek bed. There are a couple spots around there that are flat-ish that you could pitch a tent in an emergency if you do need to kind of stop for the day. If you decide to continue on, you have this, again, pseudo 2-track that has a couple washout portions, but it's pretty straightforward. And then you get to the car park. Take a breath, congratulate yourself, you just did the hardest part of the entire North Island, the Tararos. Those are beasts of mountains. So once you get to the car park, there is a free camp at that car park. I didn't film it, but if your miles link up, you can camp there. If not, you can continue the road walk on. And this is when I want to talk about the town of Waikanae. So the road walk, this will lead you into that town, and there's a place called River Pa that you can camp at. It's a church type thing. We reached out to them. We weren't able to hear back from them, so we didn't end up camping there. And we wanted to go all the way to Wellington on our resupply, so we also didn't want to push into the town and use money on a motel when we were planning on staying in Wellington anyway. But I think a lot of TA hikers go into Waikanae to rest up after the Tararos, so that's why I wanted to put that town in there. Because there is motels there, there's a holiday park close by, and there's also a full-service grocery store. We camped on a wild camp outside of town, but this is why I broke it into this type of sectional format for this hike, for this trail, for this, I guess, section. Very slow-mo here. I just wanted to show you the town itself. This is the kind of main drag of Waikanae, and there is a big grocery store there called The Countdown. You've experienced those before. And like I said, they have accommodations. They do have a bus system that can run you anywhere all the way into Wellington that we heard about. So if you want to go to the main city from here, you can as well.